Moving on then onto something a bit more future looking, or a bit of a broader question. There's clearly been a huge advance, or several huge advances in machine learning technology over the past few years, in particular around natural language modeling. What are the recent advances or new technologies in this space that we make use of at Robin?
Yeah, so I'd say, well, maybe not quite so recent, but definitely, a game changer in the field is the idea of self-attention. So, attention models, they've been introduced in the past 5 years, and they've been crucial to the improvement of using or understanding natural language. But what do we use day to day that's kind of really helped us? I guess that's the ability to have and have access to pre-trained language models. So, it's only recently in the past couple of years that they've been so accessible. And that means that instead of having to train a model on a huge amount of data to make it generalizable, we can start from, a starting point, and then really have the model focus down on what it is that we want the model to get good at identifying. So for us, that's legal text. And so, yeah, our main part of the process is taking this generalized model and having it really understand legal text.
Yeah, so it's like we're not starting from zero. We're starting from a model that kind of already understands English to some degree, and then from there it's a lot easier to make it understand legal English, if you will.
So yeah, just has to do the sort of that final step, rather than all of that process that you spoke of earlier of learning how to turn words into numbers in a useful way. We kind of get that for free, and then just need to focus on the tasks at hand that are especially relevant to us and to our products. So these sort of pre-trained language models, these large language models, as they're called, been a load of hype about them over the past few years. People might have heard of GPT-3 or other OpenAI products that are out there now. They've been used in a really wide range of applications. Can you briefly explain what is it about those? Well, firstly, what are those big models for those who've not heard of them? And is that something that could be a useful technology that we use going forward, those really large generative language models?
Yeah, so GPT-3, basically, as you said, is a generative language model. And so that model was trained to predict the next word in a sentence, essentially. And so it was trained on a supercomputer on almost the entire internet. So it cost an awful lot of money, millions, I think it was like 12 million. And this means that the model can generate basically human-like text within a matter of seconds. So it's very impressive. And that's great, but the model is very general for solving, various different tasks. And so for us to really, so for the latter part of your question, James, as for how useful that would be for us, we would need to focus on really tailoring that model to something specific that we could use, and also which would take time and resources, and also the way that we would deploy it as well, because as Chrissy said, these models are massive, and deploying them in itself is a task.
Yeah, I just want to add on that yeah, people kind of paid attention because it seemed almost as if the model was sentient, but it's that's not actually the case. It's just really good at generating text that sounds like proper English. But it still often happens that if you change just one word in the input you give it, it does something completely unexpected. So yeah, I think we might be able to use it for maybe augmenting some of our existing models, but yeah, we wouldn't just use it straight out of the box.
Yeah, I suppose that's the challenge with using those big generative models in the legal industry, is that you don't just need something that at a surface level looks like it's grammatically correct or interesting text. You need something that is very precise and means exactly what you need it to. That sense of variability and uncertainty that can be useful in, there are applications where that's really valuable. I've seen these models being used really successfully in generating advertising copy, for example, where that sort of variability kind of feels like being quite creative and generates lots of different possible ways of explaining something, and then somebody can pick the version that they think is most appropriate. Maybe the opposite to what you want in the legal case, where it's about giving the pedantic exact version of a sentence that means precisely what you mean it to, and being a bit creative and exciting isn't always what you want there. But I think you're completely right, Christy, that there are still places where, or applications where that can be valuable. It's just about deciding where in your kind of the sequence of steps that we use to provide a good end result to a user is the right place to slot in this kind of really powerful model. I suppose the other direction in which there's been some innovation over the past few years that has certainly played into the work we've been doing at Robin is around sort of cloud services and sort of deploying models in a way that's much easier, much sort of less resource intensive from a DevOps side of things. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I know that's something we've certainly been looking at over the past few months here at Robin. Do you think it's something that's likely to sort of increase or open up ML adoption, innovation, and seeing machine learning applied more widely in products?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Emma, I think you're intimately familiar with the various options by this point. Yes, I think one challenge there is latency. So you can have a model that's deployed and it's kind of not using any server resources, and then it gets spun up just when you need it, and that saves costs. But then you lose a few extra seconds, or maybe even longer, to get that model loaded and ready to do work. So I think that's one of the challenges.
Fantastic. So I think to start to wrap things up before we take any questions, are there any new technologies kind of on the horizon that we might not have used yet here at Robin, but you can see breaking through over the next few months or years that could be an exciting proposition for us to integrate into the work that we're doing, and the machine learning team more widely here are doing?
Christy, do you want to take that one?
Oh yeah, so I think one we kind of already discussed, which is these really large models. Essentially, they're kind of the same as the type of models we're already using. They're just massive. So that's one thing. I guess the other thing that's come out in the last few years as well is specialized chips for machine learning. So you have chips in smartphones, particularly iPhones have something specifically for processing images and so on. But we're also seeing dedicated chips from the cloud providers, both for training models and for doing inference in a cost-effective way. And that's something we definitely want to use as much as possible.
Yeah, I'd just add that maybe this is like personal opinion, but I think that we will probably always need a human in the loop, like at least for, I don't know, at least for the next decade. I imagine that we're going to need that, because we need to be so precise with the way in which we mark up our contracts. But as Christy mentions, there's being so much, money piled into resources to make people interacting with AI services much easier, like just the availability of models, and then also, yeah, as Christy said, the chips, different types of chips that supporting machine learning models.
I mean, maybe to just explore that point you raised there, Emma. I mean, what's your view on that, Chris? Do you think that there are certain tasks that we have a human in the loop for with our AI today that will one day be able to transition to being a purely AI approach, or do you think there's always going to be a need for a person in the loop in the legal sector?
Yeah, so actually, I've been thinking about this today, actually. So for contract, so for editing of a contract that comes in, we might be able to automate it completely if it's the same contract that comes in multiple times. So say you have, I don't know, an employment agreement, for example, and it's just from the same template. We could be fairly confident that the edits we make will be appropriate because it's the same client, it's the same sort of contract, and it's actually the same text. So yeah, I think a good part of the current manual work can be fully automated, actually.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about how, even more generally, you always have to be quite product focused, I suppose, and think about the way in which the traditional machine learning pipeline or paradigm doesn't necessarily always fit into the way that you actually need to work. And so, for example, people are always concerned in most scenarios, rightly, about making sure their model generalizes, that the test set and the training set are very separate, and we need to make sure that the test set that we've never seen before is the performance. We're trying to optimize for performance there. But you're completely right, Chris, that sometimes in reality we do see the same data again and again and again that was in the training set actually coming back in real life several times over. And so we can, in that situation, be really, really confident, and we might be, or be normally considered overfitting, but if we can get an incredibly accurate or 100% accurate result on some data we've already seen before, that might actually be, from a customer's point of view or from a user's point of view, a fairly large fraction of the interactions that they have with us. And so being able to identify those situations where we can say, hey, this isn't a problem over which I need to generalize, this isn't new unseen data, this is something over which I just need to apply a tried and tested strategy, is it's a way in which it kind of deviate from that standard, slightly academic way of thinking about things, and be a little bit more focused on the end user, I suppose.
Yeah.
Cool. Any thoughts there, Emma? Are you firmly on the we'll always need people in the loop side of the fence?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I agree basically that there will be, there are things that we can completely automate, definitely. Yeah, just not everything.